in 2021. Happy New Year, everybody. Let's start out by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to now welcome up Eric Erickson, who will say today's invocation.
Please bow your heads with me. Lord, we ask that you bless this meeting today and all who take part in it and view it, whether in person or remotely. Thank you for the hope of a new year, Lord, and the reminder that you're always making things new. And we ask, Lord, today, as we hear from the Bishop Dudley House, that you bless the families that are struggling, the individuals who are wandering and battling shelter and food insecurity, addiction, mental anguish. Lord, break our hearts for what breaks yours. Tear down our arrogance and pride. Give us humility to look into the eyes of a homeless person and see a person loved by you and who desires dignity, safety, and happiness. Thank you for the heart and spirit of those who run towards our city's homeless, offering a refuge and consistent care. Continue to strengthen them and inspire them. In your name, amen.
Thank you, Eric. I'd like to now take a moment and recognize and welcome all of our guests today. If you are a guest of the Downtown Rotary Club, please stand for a moment and just be recognized. Well, we appreciate your attending and thank you very much for joining us today. Now move into Rotary business before we have our very exciting program that Jesse Schmidt will be moderating. The Rotary business today is going to consist of 3 individuals who will come up and give the club an update on how things are going here at the middle of this Rotary year. When we set out on the Rotary year this year, we prioritize what we call 3 pillars. And those 3 pillars revolve around the following 3 things: programming, the Sioux 52 initiative, and membership. We assign to each of these pillars an individual who you all know to handle and work with the committee that was structured for all of them to help shepherd these initiatives forward. Tony Knorr has been leading the programming committee since July 1st, and he will come up and visit with you shortly and give you an update. The Sioux 52 initiative has been led by Tony Burke, and membership has been led by Cindy Peterson. These are the 3 priorities of the club this year, and this is where pretty much all of our attention has been placed. I'd like to now invite up Tony Knorr, who will give the club an update on the programming initiative.
Thank you, President Jason. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. And for the programming portion, pillar, of Downtown Rotary, I want to start with a story. And this story goes back to the 1950s. A young lady that was born here in South Dakota, grew up in Flandreau, graduated in 1974. She was an aspirational individual, went on to school in St. Louis, where she got her undergrad degree and her law degree. And she came back to South Dakota. She came back to build a life for herself, and that she has. She's become an inspiration for others. She's developed relationships on a national scale with folks the like of Janet Reno and the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She embodies what we hope to pursue through our programming, and that is integrity, diversity, service, and leadership. And I'm speaking of Judge Karen Schreier, who in the late 1990s became the first woman to serve as U.S. Attorney for the state of South Dakota. She then went on to be the first woman from the state of South Dakota appointed to be a federal judge. And I just share this as one example of the many that we've had in terms of programs where we work to highlight the work of others, have conversations. That one was around women's right to vote. Things that matter, things that are influential to us as downtown Rotarians. And I thought she was a perfect example of someone from South Dakota, left and came back and is making a difference here. And I had a couple quotes from individuals. She's been a real mentor to me as a person that kind of came up to the ranks and was able to navigate my place into leadership in the state bar. She said, she's a strong supporter of all lawyers. She's very interested in educating people about the federal court. And as we hear about mentorship, it's one of the approaches that we take through that is the ability to educate, to help others learn through our conversations that we're having here. And it's been an extraordinary year. You know that, we know that. And I'll just share a couple of the highlights from 2020 in the year that has been, and then we'll look towards the year ahead. As I mentioned, when we all aggregate on March 11th, realized the world as we knew it changed. We knew as downtown Rotarians we would have to pivot, and we pivoted quickly. We took off 3 weeks, and then April 6th we reconvened and we did it virtually. We brought together a group, a committee of 5 of us to serve as a programming committee, and that has really been the collaborative approach that we've taken. And I want to say thank you to those individuals, and also have a couple other thank yous. Alex Ramirez and Eric Ellefson, who helped us navigate the early days of the pandemic in 2020. Quick pivot to Thinker Studios and the individuals here, Dan and Tommy, led by Rotarian Vani Harari. We established a partnership through a transparent RFP process that was led at the board level. I talked about the creation of the programming committee. Individuals on that committee are Jesse Schmidt, Jack Marsh, Vani Harari, and Joel Dykstra, chaired by President-elect myself. We added YouTube as another channel in late August, and then we could not have done this. If you think we talk about the Rotary year being July 1 through now, but even going back to April, working with Jesse Schmidt, our executive director Angie, Jason Herbold, it was a seamless transition through a period that we faced a little adversity. Through that, and I'll just take you through some of the programs that were either viewed the most or were reported on in the paper. If you recall the incident that we had at the Sioux Empire Mall, we had Vani Harari and Lieutenant Toom in the Monday after to talk about what was happening in our community and shine a light on that. That became more of a series and really a conversation about building a better community. Proud of that effort. That effort is not completed, but we made good strides there and actually had Vani and/or Lieutenant Toom for a total of 4 programs over the summer. We were back in person at the Washington Pavilion. For those of you that were able to join us on August 31st, we welcomed our governor. That program was well attended in person and got over 20,000 views on Facebook. I talked about Judge Schreier, who joined us September 21st, which was just happened to be a few days after the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Should marijuana be legal? I don't know what this says about our state, but this still continues to be the most viewed program in our recent history, with over 48,000 Facebook views. Jack Marsh did an excellent job moderating that to tell the story, both sides, including the science behind marijuana, and that was in October. In November, we had a conversation around the Sanford Health merger, and that was just a few days prior to the change in leadership. So we had both the outgoing and the incoming president and CEO on the stage at the same time. So all told, April through December, and I include April, since we came back, we have over 216,000 Facebook views, and of those 35 programs, averaged over 6,000 views online per week. So we know and we're proud of the fellowship that we're able to have here, but we've really extended that conversation beyond these walls. We look forward to filling this room and filling it beyond even how it's filled today. Until then, we're going to continue to reach people the way that we're able to. Looking ahead to the year of 2021, we're going to have an ongoing focus on timely programs that are meaningful and relevant to our Rotarians and the broader community. And we're gonna focus on those considerations, those values that have driven us in the past. I talked about reconnecting. We're all looking forward to the days where we can get together in person in larger groups, and that will be a focus in due time as our environment allows. And then a focus on building a better downtown Rotary. While we talk about the past, we celebrate the year that's been. Both you, our current Rotarians, and our future Rotarians aren't joining us for what we've done in the past. It's really about building a better Rotary for the future, and that's going to be our focus for 2021. So as we turn the page on 2020, filled with gratitude, look forward to 2021 with optimism. So thank you, and I'll ask Tony Burke to come up and share on Sioux 52.
Well, that's a hard act to follow with stories, but he's actually shared a great article this morning by Simon Sinek, which is truly inspirational, and his closing remarks were really critically important for the future of our club and the future of our community. So thanks again, Tony. We look forward to your year coming up as president as well. Let's give him another round because he did an amazing job through a tough time. Well, again, thank you to President Herbold, and Happy New Year to everybody as we launch into 2021. Almost a year ago, in partnership with Mayor Paul Tenhaken, the City of Sioux Falls Helpline Center, and nonprofits who lead mentoring programs, they collaborated to launch the Sioux 52 Mentoring Initiative. This initiative created a universal connection point for our community's mentoring efforts. The ultimate vision is to bring 52 nonprofits, 520 businesses, 5,200 mentors together who will provide 52,000 new mentoring hours to the community by 2026. In the past year, 27 mentoring programs and 30 business and organizational partners have caught the vision to come together. 248 mentors have been added as of November 30th to the mentoring pipeline gap, which is well over 1,000 vacancies and growing. As we all know, COVID-19 has impacted us greatly, and anecdotally, consensus in the community is mentoring in all areas of the community, all neighborhoods of the community, is needed more so than ever before. The Sioux 52 Steering Committee, the PR Marketing Group, the Recruiting Group, the Community Partner Advisory Groups have worked diligently to amplify the importance of mentoring in all corners of the community. Over 20 Rotarians and non-Rotarians make up this team, and we are grateful for their dedication, perseverance, and commitment to the vision. They have built out strategies, plans, and collaterals to engage, educate, and inform the community despite the pandemic. A huge, huge heartfelt thank you to the team who are driving this forward. In September, Sioux 52 launched the Rotary Mentoring Moment in partnership with Dakota News Now's pro bono support, placing the stories in the prime audience spot each month. The Rotary Mentoring Moment focus is to provide high-profile stories which spotlight various types of mentoring models throughout the community. Soon you'll start seeing billboards around the city asking the community to join the Sioux 52 Mentoring Initiative. This pro bono effort is courtesy of Book Your Billboard. Along with these high-profile opportunities, social media is being used during this month, and other marketing and advertising efforts are in the making, as January is Rotary Mentoring Month. Coming together as one Sioux Falls, we can overcome most hurdles. With in-school mentoring essentially shut down to protect students and staff, the Sioux Falls School District, Lutheran Social Services, teammates, and your Rotary Club have come together to roll out this month a pilot for virtual in-school mentoring. To have a successful pilot and scale, we need administrative volunteers to support mentees in school so we can move mentoring forward. The Rotary Engagement Committee and the Sioux 52 Steering Committee will be reaching out to find a cadre of 20 volunteers to meet this need in the coming days. If this interests you and you can fill it in with your staff from your businesses, please engage. Also, when you receive this information, please share in your networks and your businesses. The success of this pilot is contingent on finding 20 dedicated volunteers. As mentioned, January is National Mentoring Month, and on January 25th, we're pleased to host the first annual Sioux 52 Mentoring Initiative Summit. This summit will bring a facilitated group of leaders together to inspire, educate, and inform nonprofits, individuals, and businesses to come together under the amplification of the long-term importance of mentoring in our community. Panelists will include Raina DeBoer, our Chief Cultural Officer for the City of Sioux Falls, Tom Walsh, CEO of Great Life and the visionary to bring teammates to Sioux Falls, Rotarian Dr. Jane Stavum, our Superintendent of the Sioux Falls School District, and Rotarian CEO Market Beat Matt Paulson. Mayor Tenhaken will co-facilitate this conversation with myself. Our call to action to all of you today is to invite businesses and nonprofit leaders to join us in person or online to learn how to engage in this community-wide effort, which is making our community better, one relationship at a time. Thank you.
Cindy's on her way up. Before Cindy gets up here, I just want to say a couple things. Express my appreciation to both Tonys. Tony Knorr has certainly elevated the programming for this club and will no doubt continue to improve it as the year goes on. And we are committed to bringing those relevant conversations to this club and to the wider community. And Tony Burke, who has been leading Sioux 52, you heard him mention, he glossed over it because he had a lot to say in a very short window, but he is facilitating multiple committees to drive Sioux 52 forward. The Rotary Mentoring Moment, the coordination, the billboards, all that stuff is an effort of monumental levels. And I just want to express appreciation to Tony Burke for doing that and taking that heavy lift this year. Cindy, I'd like to now welcome you up to do your part, which is the membership side. But Cindy has brought forward a lot of infrastructure to the membership piece, and I am looking forward to having her visit with all of you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Membership took on this year with the objective, grow and build a club of active community leaders that represent the demographic makeup of Sioux Falls. A committee, as you've heard, really has been kind of the staple structure as we carry our efforts forward this year, those three pillars. Membership also put a committee together so that we could transform that objective into results. Shout out to committee members Ryan Boucher, Joni Johnson, Angie Kuiper, Rick Melmer, Keith Severson, Anita Wetch, Stephen Williamson, and our club president, Jason Herbolt. As a committee, we set the following three goals. One, transform the perception of downtown Rotary from being a place where important people gather to being where important conversations happen. Number two, secure 30 new downtown Rotarians by March 31st. And three, develop a process that drives potential member identification and cultivation. So I'll give you an update on those in the reverse order. Number one, building a process. The intent of building a process for membership was not to just think about membership recruitment this year, but how do we frame success in future years? This process now exists. And while the process isn't rocket science, it does put structure around the club's membership efforts. It also, which I think is what I'm most excited about, it also puts energy and strategy into building intentional relationships with pipeline groups and advancing the pace in which we bring new members into the club. Number two, in pursuit of securing 30 new downtown Rotarians by March 31st, the club has added 19 new Rotarians, and I see some of those faces in the room. We are so glad to have you enriching this club and being a part of what we do. Part of that membership effort is engagement. And so one of the things that we're going to be able to do here in the coming weeks is have new member orientation, and we've got dates scheduled for January 14th and January 26th. We've got 13 of those 19 folks already RSVP'd, and so we're hoping that we can get those folks involved in the club, particularly in this special year that we're having. And the third goal, transforming the perception of downtown Rotary from being where important people gather to where important conversations happen. While this goal is less measurable than the first two goals, its aim is to be mindful and intentional about our identity as a club and how we continue to make an impact. As membership looks to the second half of the Rotary year, I ask that each of you members consider how you can be an ambassador for this club. I love tying it into the mentoring component. If there is a leader in our community who just hasn't had the chance to experience downtown Rotary and you think that they would benefit from and contribute to being a part of where important conversations happen, please consider inviting them to an upcoming meeting or connecting that person with myself or with Angie or any of the other folks that you see in the room today that can help bring them into the fold and involve them in downtown Rotary. As we continue our focus on mission, mentoring, programming, and again, being a place where important conversations happen. I'm really optimistic about the year and seeing our club grow, and thank you all for being a part of our club today and into the future.
I want one more round of applause for these three individuals for leading these important initiatives. I'd like to now invite up Rotarian Jesse Schmidt and Madeline Shields for today's important conversation about the Bishop Dudley House.
Okay, we're ready to roll. I'm not sure if we're one of those important conversations in 2021, but we're going to give her a whirl anyway. So I'm thrilled to be sitting here, and in full transparency, I have had a relationship with the Bishop Dudley House really since it started. In the initial phases to raise money to build the Bishop Dudley House, I was asked to be part of that initiative, and I accepted. And I'm going to tell you, I've never had an easier time raising money in this community than when you talk about people that really need it. So it was really one of my proudest moments to help raise money to support the Bishop Dudley House. And in that effort, Rotary has always, since the inception of the Bishop Dudley House, many Rotarians have supported the funding of the Bishop Dudley House initially and then ongoing. Through the Centennial Fund, Downtown Rotary supported the club, and then you may recall that we bought lockers for our guests at the Bishop Dudley House to put their belongings in, things that you don't think about, but when you carry everything you own with you all day, every day, it's a burden. So it's a physical burden that they carry in addition to the mental burden. So Downtown Rotary was really instrumental in that. And then shortly after the Bishop Dudley House was opened, we supported them updating their laundry facilities. We do nearly 5,000 loads of laundry at the Bishop Dudley House every year. And so you can imagine our machines take some pretty big beatings. So again, we're grateful that the club has supported us ongoing. You may recall that one of our last meetings last year, Steve Sikorsky shared that there was a district grant that was given to our club to support Bishop Dudley House again. And our club, in the amount of $2,000, and our club is thrilled to match that with $1,000. So there'll be an additional $3,000 coming to the Bishop Dudley House on behalf of the district and our club. So, yeah. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madeline. So, Madeline, you are a face that people in Sioux Falls know. You've been around a while, and I mean that in the best way. So, tell us a little bit about Madeline and how you got to the Bishop Dudley House.
Sure. Well, the Bishop Dudley House is my second career. Any of you, I'm dating myself. I graduated from South Dakota State University with a journalism degree, and my first job out of the gate was at KSOO Radio working alongside Wayne Pritchard. I don't know how many of you remember old Wayne Pritchard, but he used to call me Matilda. He'd look through the glass and Matilda will bring you up on the news. So it was kind of a joke, but I worked as a legislative reporter and education reporter, went to Oklahoma, worked as a news director during the Gulf War, came back and worked at Kello and at KDLT as news director. Stayed home and raised some kids for a couple of years and took a job at the banquet, which completely changed my life. I did not know that going to work every single day was going to be fun, and it never seemed like a job. And I was at the banquet for 14 years, and then this position at the Bishop Dudley House came open as the executive director. And I thought, well, I was kind of ready for a challenge. However, I didn't know it was going to be quite this much of a challenge. I was so grateful to get this position, and I love every minute of it.
Well, if she can still say that this far in, we know we've hired the right person. So Madeline, now that you are in it now over a year, what's probably been the biggest surprise?
Sure. Probably the biggest surprise was how much work it really is to run a 24/7 shelter. When I first started there, I likened it to a motel. We are very much like a motel. We have a big lobby, and there are people there all the time, 24/7. Just like a hotel or a motel, they're walking around in the middle of the night. It's just the same at the Bishop Dudley House. We are a shelter. We ask people to go to sleep at 10 o'clock. We have lights out and it's quiet time, but we're not a prison. We're not a jail. And so people are up. There's a lot of people with anxiety. There's a lot of people who they're homeless. And so they have a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and they don't sleep very well. And so we have a staff of 27 people. 23 are full-time, and we have 4 part-timers. That's a big staff. We see about 145 people stay each night. We have 80 beds for men and 20 beds for women, and 7 family rooms. Since September, we have been well over capacity, seeing as many as 121 men during the evenings and up to 36 women. And so we make every space available there at the Bishop Dudley House to keep people in.
Yeah, so Madeline, when you're full like that, when you have beds for 80, where do the additional 40 men and 20 women, where are they sleeping?
We have cots, we have mats. Many of our guests prefer a mat on the floor. I guess they feel safer. A lot of our guests have medical conditions. They may have seizure disorders, and many do not want to sleep on a top bunk. And so, a lot prefer to lay on a mat on the floor. And that's where we put people. We open our day rooms, and we put people in our day rooms to space out.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So the Bishop Dudley House was established when the Good Shepherd Center transitioned from a daytime shelter to the Bishop Dudley House, which is an emergency overnight shelter in addition to the daytime shelter. So then, as you said, then we have the pandemic, March 11th. And we all know what we did in kind of our shelter in place things. We closed the doors to our businesses, or we sent people to work from home. How do you do that when your guests are with you all the time in close proximity?
It was extremely difficult. And of course, we didn't know what we were doing. Just like, I hadn't heard of Zoom. I didn't know what we were doing. I knew early on we had to get people in masks, and we had to figure out how to get them to wash their hands numerous times a day. And I remember the second it came to me. I was standing there. We serve lunch Monday through Friday at 11:30. And I went over to the men's side and I said, okay, everybody, we're going to serve lunch. We're going to come in slowly. Go wash your hands first. And I bet there were 80 men in that room, and about 12 of them got up and went into the bathroom and washed their hands. I went, okay, this isn't going to work. So I got out the hand sanitizer, and we all know that became like gold, and I knew we weren't going to be able to afford that. So I thought, well, the fair has those hand washing stations. So that was the first phone call I made, is to figure out how to get those portable hand washing stations into our building. And I didn't know that I was going to become unpopular with everyone else, because I thought about it first, and I got 4 of them as quickly as I could, and they're still there. We still have them. We've been renting those hand washing stations. And every time someone walks in our doors, they wash their hands. Everyone in the building wears a mask. The only time they do not have a mask is when they're eating lunch. Now, do we tell them 1,000 times a day, or maybe 10,000 times a day? Pull up your mask, put it over your nose, pull it up. It's kind of like junior high. But we do it, and they comply. They forget. We all forget, and so that was probably the biggest challenge. And then when the mayor put in the shelter-in-place order, where the no lingering and no loitering, that was difficult because our guests are transient. They are used to coming and going and doing what they do, and so we had to tell them, if you go out, you're going to have to stay out because we cannot have you bringing that back to us. Well, as everything kind of closed down, there was nowhere for them to go. There was no library open for our guests to go to. No McDonald's to sit in the restaurant area or Hardee's. Everything closed down, so it was a pretty easy choice for them to stay put. And that, I think, really, really helped. We did not see a massive outbreak among our guests. Our guests did become infected with COVID-19, but it was a very slow, gradual infection. It wasn't a huge outbreak like I think a lot expected it to be because we were in such close quarters. There was no way to social distance. What we finally did is open up our overnight rooms during the day. And we allowed the most vulnerable people in those into the overnight room during the day. They could lay down, they could sit in a chair, they could sit at the bunk, however they wanted to, just to get out of that very crowded room. And that was the men and the women. We have a lot of people that have major health issues, chronic kidney disease and heart disease and diabetes. And so we separated those most vulnerable people best we could.
Sure. So it's winter again. We went through summer. We're now back into winter where we were last year. So where are we at this year, and how is it different, Madeline?
Well, right now our guests are, they're complying. They're used to this. They wash their hands. They're wearing their mask. They're helping out just like they always have. What's different is we don't see any COVID right now. We, a couple of months ago, we had a husband contract COVID-19, and then about 3 weeks later, his wife was positive. Now they're staying in separate areas because she's on the women's side and he's on the men's side, but they see each other, of course, during the day. But right now, I do have city and county calls each week with Carrie Benz from county and then Vanessa from city. And we talk about our numbers, how many people are staying, and about the COVID. And in their recovery center, they have 0 patients right now.
Wow.
So I don't know if our guests have mostly already had it or they're immune. They have a great immunity. And so I don't know. I can't really answer that, but we've been working. Our staff, we've had 3 staff people contract COVID.
Really? And 23, and you've had, or 20,
Yeah,
whatever.
7. And actually some have come and gone.
Sure.
So we've had many more. I bet we've had 36, working at the Bishop Dudley House is not for everyone. And
Sure.
We hire a lot of people and they stay a few weeks and they're like, yeah, I didn't know it was going to be like this. So
Sure.
that's how it is.
Sure. So Madeline, in addition to your overnight emergency rooms, you have some family rooms. Tell us how a family ends up at the Bishop Dudley House, and then some of their success stories, if you would.
Sure. We have 7 family rooms, and we have a family coordinator, and she works very closely with a couple of social workers from Minnehaha County. And we get calls every single day from families saying, do you have an opening? We are almost always full family rooms. They're just one statistic that I have from the Sioux Falls Public School District is that they have identified that there are 459 homeless children in the Sioux Falls Public School System, and that is 257 families. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're sleeping in a car or that they're on the streets. It does mean that they do not have a roof over their head that is their own place, that they can call their own home. And so our families come to us, they are mostly the most desperate people. They may have be living in their cars. We do not keep a list, a waiting list, because we don't want to give people false hope. Because people they are eternal optimists. They will always say, well, we can hold off. We can sleep in our car or our van until this opens. It should only be a week or two. We've had families stay there for 7 and 8 months because they are so difficult to house. And this is help with the county.
Yeah, so can you tell us about the affordable housing and the difficulty to transition from being homeless into an affordable housing situation?
Sure. So many of our families, they have a poor rental history. They have, their finances are in terrible shape. They have maybe skipped out on rent for other landlords. And so that's where they find so much difficulty. They cannot get a place to live. We had a family with 4 little children that was with us for 7 months. The mother had no identification. And then the pandemic hit. It's impossible to get a birth certificate, a social security card. It was months, even with the county trying to help. It's just everything was backed up. The offices were closed. And you cannot rent anywhere without having a social security card for every person in the family. So they had an infant all the way up to 6 years old, these 4 little girls. They all had to have a copy of their birth certificate and a social security card. That prevented them from getting a place to live. And the dad was working full time, and so she was there, the mom was there with the children all day. And it's just one thing after another that prevents people from getting a place to live.
Sure. In the time that you've been there, share one of our greatest success stories that you've heard.
Oh, there are so many. We had a guy who was staying with us. He was homeless in Brookings. He ended up coming here. It was kind of a sad situation. He was bound and determined to get out of the Bishop Dudley House. He was going out and looking for jobs. He got a job at Taco John's. And then they hired him full time. Well, then the pandemic hit. And so then his hours got cut. Well, then they closed the dining room, and then he lost his job. So he was right back to square one again. And, the discouragement, it's really hard. And then all those restaurants closed. Most of our guests, they either work construction or they work in restaurants. And that was some of the most difficult things. So then he was back. He'd already secured an apartment, but now he couldn't pay for it. So now he's back. And he stayed another couple of months. He ended up getting a job at Kentucky Fried Chicken, and now he's been promoted. He was living in a transitional apartment. We kind of call them, it's like the Sioux Falls Inn or one of those motel rooms that they rent by the month, and it's about $450 to rent those. And so he was paying that, and he had this job at Kentucky Fried Chicken. Well, now he got promoted to manager, and he stops in about once a month just to tell us how he's doing. And he got his own apartment because he's got 2 Chihuahuas, and his sister's been watching him, and that was his goal, is to get his dogs back. And that's a great success story.
Yeah, for sure. So Madeline, I think people often think that the Bishop Dudley House, obviously supported by organizations like Rotary and individuals, but I think people think that it's supported fully by the Catholic diocese and the people that make up the Catholic Church in Sioux Falls. Can you tell us what the relationship is with the Catholic diocese and Bishop Dudley?
So the Catholic diocese owns our building. They were instrumental in getting the Bishop Dudley House built and getting it remodeled, and so that the Good Shepherd Center could move in, and we would have the day shelter and the overnight shelter all in one roof. We are rent-free there, which is fabulous. That would cost us a lot of money if we were not able to have that facility for free. The Catholic diocese also helps us with administration. So they provide like our HR, and they help us with our payroll. The Bishop Dudley House, our staff has to raise the money to fund the entire budget, which is about $1.3 million. However, we get this help with, they provide IT. If we have a computer go bad, then we can call over and they can say, oh, we have donated refurbished computers, and they will come over and they will help us with that. They will help us with the software. And so it's a huge support. And then with the Catholic Community Foundation, that's another separate, they do some fundraisers for us. They partner with us, and they're always out there as well telling our story, so that we have support all over eastern South Dakota from people who hear about the Bishop Dudley House, whether they have been there to visit or not.
Yeah, so tell us, this year, Christmas at the Cathedral, I know that's a highlight for your staff and your guests. It was different this year. What did the Catholic Community Foundation, how were they able to pull that off?
Sure. So the Catholic Community Foundation was not able to have the Christmas at the Cathedral as it did traditionally. And so they put together a compilation of past years, and they brought that to the Bishop Dudley House for our guests to watch. And they came and served dinner to our guests. We're usually invited up to the cathedral to watch the performance in person. And then they rent the buses. They pick us all up, and any guests that sign up, sometimes it's 60, 70 people will go and enjoy that. They provide dinner, dessert, a cookie reception after it, and then they take all the guests and staff or whoever's there to go and see the Christmas lights. This year it was different. They came to us. We were able to watch it in our conference room, and still had a delicious dinner with that. And we're just grateful for the commitment that they have to our guests.
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to turn the conversation a little bit here. There's been a lot of conversation about our neighborhood, your neighborhood, 8th and Indiana, and over the last several years. Can you tell us from your perspective what your neighborhood's like and how that neighborhood has changed and transitioned?
Sure. I think, when I started at the banquet, it was down at 300 North Main. And then the banquet moved to 8th and Indiana. And so when I took the job at the Bishop Dudley House, I was not new to the neighborhood. I was new to the position. And so we knew a lot of the people who work in that neighborhood. They do face some challenges with our guests. I'm not going to deny that at all, because our guests, as I go out and I speak to places, sometimes they are often the hardest people to love. They have free will. And I think there was a lot of misunderstanding with some of the businesses in our neighborhood. They did not know that we were 24/7. They didn't know that we had full showers and restrooms all day long, that people could come in and use our services during the day. And so I think, there was just some learning on both areas, both sides, on how we could work together and make that neighborhood a lot better. And I think we have come together. There was a store down at the end of the corner that was selling those 40s of, I call it poison. They're 5 beers in one can. It's like the juice and the camo, those drinks. Nobody twists the arms of our guests to go down there and buy those. However, the temptation is there. And so many of our guests, they do suffer from addiction, and alcohol addiction, and drug addiction, and mental health issues. And a lot of times that's how they mask these mental health issues, is by turning to alcohol. And it was a very convenient way to get that alcohol, and it was cheap. I think those, 5 beers, I think it was about less than $1.50 a can. That was a problem that plagued our entire neighborhood. And the city council did vote not to renew their license. And so that has helped, I think. And there are other businesses on the east side of Sioux Falls that are within walking distance of our neighborhood that either choose not to sell, or at least it's at a price that is a little bit unattainable for many of our guests. And so I believe that has helped. And our neighbors, you know, we have a great relationship. I just went over to one of them the other day. We do business with many of the neighbors in the neighborhood, and I think it was hard, but he said, you know, I have to say it. I just wasn't sure I'd believe it, but since you've been there, it's been better. And you know, and we are
That's
friends.
a big win. Yeah.
It was a big win, and he, you know, we talk about it every time I go over there, and we have a great friendship, and so he knows, can be completely honest. If there's a problem, I said, you call me, I'll be there. And so I think it's just that's been just the openness. And I invited them, you know, all the neighbors in, and we've had many of our neighbors come in, take a tour. They came for our open house, which was before the pandemic. And so, you know, I think that really helped.
Yeah, good. Let's talk a little bit about addiction and mental health issues and our guests. Talk about how that affects their everyday life and their ability to move from the Bishop Dudley House to somewhere else.
You know, it's really a challenge. If I had to guess, it's got to be 90% or more suffer from some kind of mental illness. That mental illness, it triggers the addictions because they don't feel right, they don't know what's causing some of their problems, so they turn to alcohol, they turn to drugs to mask those problems. We do not have a great system to help these folks. There is really nowhere that I can send them. There is the resources are so limited to be able to help people who are unable to work because of their addiction. They're not of an age where they're going to qualify for any Social Security. And there are more of them than there are resources available. And the anxiety, especially now during a pandemic, with all of these other agencies closed, we have offices at the Bishop Dudley House that we open to other agencies to come in and meet with our guests. But almost all of those agencies closed during the pandemic. They were all working from home, which really, really caused even more anxiety and difficulties for our guests through this entire past year. And you know, we do the best we can with creating new activities for people to do. We keep people busy. We have activities. We have them help us. We do not have a custodian on staff. And so our guests do all the cleaning. They help clean the kitchen. They help cook. They wipe down all the mats. They do the laundry every day and clean the bathrooms, wash all the windows, sweep, mop the floors. You know, this is a lot. It's a big facility if you haven't been there. And it takes a lot of hands to do the work that is there. So we do the best we can to help alleviate that temptation to go out. But again, our guests have free will, and we cannot, you know, we can't prevent them from
Sure.
going.
So if you have a guest that ends up at the Bishop Dudley House and they don't have their meds and they've been robbed, so they don't have a wallet, they don't, what's the day in their life looks like? How do you progress from where you're at, you've got just what you have on your back, to getting out of the Bishop Dudley House? What's that look like?
First off, what we do is we try to assess where they're at, and we calm them down, because anybody who finds themselves in that situation, they're panic stricken. I've had more people come in those doors and said, I've never been in a homeless shelter before. I can't believe I'm here. And I said, well, we're going to figure this out together. We have a staff that we can start to maneuver those situations. We can find out, what do we need to do to get your birth certificate? What state is it in? Can we get some help through county? Can we get help through any city funds or anything like that? So I think the first thing is to assess this person and find out what can we do first to calm you down, because you're going to be safe here while we get this figured out. It can be a long road, especially if they're not born in South Dakota, because Minnehaha County can help them. Department of Social Services can help them if they have South Dakota birth certificate. The Social Security card is a little bit more difficult, and that's what prevents people from being able to get a job right away. So if we can get some of those situations alleviated, what we try to do is find out if anybody ever has a copy of their Social Security card anywhere. Some of the other agencies once in a while will have a copy of it. If they've ever received any services ever in their past history, we can get a copy of it, and that a lot of times that works for things. So it's just it can be very slow and tedious, but people who are determined to get up and get out of there, they do it. They do it pretty quickly. There are other people that suffer from mental illness, and there are just really nothing for us. There's nothing we can really do to help them if they don't want to go and seek those services, like at Southeastern Behavioral Health, or seek some of that mental health. Because if someone comes to us and they don't have a diagnosis, there's nothing for them. Trying to get any kind of disability or try to qualify for Social Security is extremely difficult. We see some of our guests have been working since they were 14, 15 years old. And they work roofing jobs, they work concrete jobs, construction jobs. By the time they're 56, 57, they're worn out. Their knees don't work, their feet don't work, their hands are swollen, their knuckles don't work. They're too young for Social Security. And oftentimes they are rejected for any kind of disability because they aren't disabled enough, yet they have no skills. They might have a 5th grade or 6th grade education. And so those are the people that we really struggle to figure out what is your next step.
Sure. Yeah, I can't imagine not knowing what the next day holds. And your body can no longer help you, go get that job. So, Madeline, I have one last question for you, and it's a big one. Being part of the downtown community, and our club being part of the downtown community, there have been a lot of conversations this year about how things have changed across our city. We see more panhandlers, I think, than we've ever seen before. I know oftentimes people think that they're from the Bishop Dudley House. We get painted with that broad brush. Help us think of the things to say or do, or kind of, I guess, pull the veil back off what that panhandling community is like and how we as individuals can truly help somebody if they need it.
Sure. Well, all of us see the panhandlers. They're downtown, they're standing on the street corners downtown, they're at the intersections by the interstate, they're everywhere. And a lot of those faces are familiar to me, but they may not be staying currently. The one thing I guess I can, the advice that I give is just what support them by giving them cash. For many of the panhandlers, that's a job. They look at that as a business opportunity, and it is very, very lucrative. I've had guests who have not stayed with us for 6 months because they can go out and they can make $300 a day panhandling. They will go get a motel in one of those month-long motels, and they'll pay their own rent. They can order their own food and groceries, and that's how they live. It's a job for them. And so, if you want to truly help, just say to them, hey, what can I help you with? I know you're probably in a tough spot. There are resources. We know that there's resources. There's the banquets serving them food. The Bishop Dudley House is giving them a bed, food, showers, laundry facilities, all for free. The Union Gospel Mission is right there as well. There are resources for all of these folks. But it pulls on people's heartstrings and they know it. And if you've been to Las Vegas, you've been to other cities, you see it everywhere. It is more prevalent here now. I think in the last couple of years, we did not see as many as we have. But you know what? These people are, if you have a conversation with them, you're going to find that there's a lot of commonality there. We have a lot more in common with the guests who frequent the streets and the Bishop Dudley House and the banquet than we have differences. And I've sat on some panels where people say, well, they look scary. I always raise my kids around the Bishop Dudley House and the banquet, and I always said, it's not the scary ones you need to worry about. It's the ones that don't look scary are the ones that are truly scary because you don't know to be afraid of them. And so our guests they're trying to make a buck, and that's where the panhandling comes in. Now, if you sit down and have a conversation with them, I think you probably learn from them, and they can learn from you about, be frank. You know what? You're hurting my business, man. You know, this is not good. What can we do to make this better for you? What can we do? And they're probably just going to walk away. And I encourage everybody just to, speak to them just like you would anyone else that you'd see on the sidewalk, maybe you're introduced to.
Thanks. Thank you, Madeline. I don't know if anybody has any questions for Madeline. We have just a couple minutes, so I would.
Hi, Madeline Shields. Thank you and Jesse for a wonderful presentation today. And I will admit I have had the opportunity to visit and tour your facilities, and I am in awe at the kinds of things that you've accomplished with the resources that you're given. So congratulations for the great work that you're doing. Thank you. We're fortunate to have you in our community making a difference. My question for you is you see each day many barriers for people to become independent. For example, not being able to get a social security number. If you could change one or two things in public policy, either at a city level or a state level, that might help more of our community members become independent and not homeless, what are a few of those solutions that we could deal with, maybe in the short term or the long term?
Sure, thank you. Free birth certificates, first off. $15 isn't a lot to many of us. $15 is unattainable for someone who might have 50 cents on their person. That is a hopeless case. That is so difficult. Just every barrier like that is difficult. The inability to get an appointment and the hoops that people have to jump through, even to get a Social Security card, the difficulty that it takes, the transportation is terrible for our guests. If there is, and I don't know what the solution is, but to have the Social Security office way out in Southwest Sioux Falls when we have all the resources that people need just off of downtown Sioux Falls, they can't get there. You know, they don't have Ubers, they don't have phones that they have a card tied to. The transportation is extremely difficult for our guests. That and free birth certificates are the two things right off the top of my head.
Hi, Madeline. Dean Karski. As a board member of the LINK, or Community Triage Center, and I'm sure you're aware of maybe some of what is going on, but just to maybe update you, we will be opening it this spring. That's the plan. But when you talk about the mental illness and the co-occurring substance use disorders, that is exactly what our LINK will be there for. And just so that your staff knows that it's a short walk to where we're going to be right downtown, and to make use of that facility that so much time and effort and resources are going into. We're there to help you out with a lot of what you have going on. Not a question, but just plugging the triage because it is going to work hand in glove with what you're doing. So, but thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you. And I did have the staff of the triage, which will be the link, came over and they toured the Bishop Dudley House. I think there were 4 or 5 of them, and we had a great conversation. They were there a couple of hours, and that is going to help tremendously. It's basically taking over for detox, if people aren't sure what that is. And we call detox a lot because we are not equipped. We are not medical professionals. We are not social workers. We are there to help invite in people who are the most vulnerable in our community. And we need the backing and the help of the medical profession right here, and the ambulance, and the police, and paramedics. They come frequently, and we need them to come frequently, because when we have somebody who is highly intoxicated, we don't know if they are so intoxicated that they could die from alcohol poisoning. We're not equipped to make that decision. We don't have those PBT tests. We don't make people blow. We invite them in to use the bathroom and to feed them lunch and to give them a bed. And so we know that the link is going to be a tremendous help to us, and it's going to get these folks out of the jail, and it'll be in a different place. So they won't be going to jail to sober up, because detox is in the jail. Maybe they'll be more apt to stay and do the 28-day treatment there. So I'm very, very excited for that. And thank you, Dean, for bringing that up, because I see that we will be filling up your beds.
Thanks, Madeline.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for... And thank you for your donations, because we could not do it without you.
One more round of applause for Madeline and the work she's doing. I just really appreciate the thoughtful
Thank you.
just approach that you talked about the work that you're doing and the challenges that these individuals face in their daily lives, and what we can do as individuals and as a community. Thank you very much. Thank you, fellow Rotarians and guests, for joining us today. And please join us next week, Monday, January 11th, where the program will be vaccine considerations, deployment logistics, prioritization, timeline, trust, and efficacy. Our panelists will be Dr. David Basel, VP of Avera Medical Group Clinical Quality, and serves on Avera's Central COVID Incident Command and is chair of Avera's Vaccine Allocation Committee. We'll also be joined by Dr. Mike Wildy, VP Medical Officer, Sanford, Sioux Falls Region, and Kim Malsum Risden, Secretary of South Dakota Department of Health. Rotarian Bonnie Herreri will moderate next week's discussion. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.